In this video, I want to introduce you to the SYN cycle, and the SYN cycle is essentially the request cycle of any SPSYN request. And from version 1.2 of SPSYN, you can basically write plugins that will allow you to interact with that request cycle, to manipulate it, to sort of change the output, to change the order of things. There's tons of things that you want to do. So I'm doing a brief overview here of SPSYN. I'm assuming you know a bit about it already, but essentially here's what's going on. In SPSYN there is a resource list, a list of resources. I've added a couple of here. These come out of the box in SPSYN version 1.2. And the way it works is that for the request cycle will go through these resources, and they will load an assembly, and they will evaluate whether this resource should load. You can add filters, you can do tons of stuff to make sure, or check whether you want to run this particular resource or not. And if you do, you also load an assembly in order to get the output from your particular resource type, and then these sort of types are customizable, and there's a different video that shows you how you develop these. So in this case, for instance, this is a script resource, and this will basically output this link, a script link to this resource if this resource item should load. So it'll go through all of these items, and then it will sort of evaluate that. So this is sort of the request cycle of SPSYN, called the SYN cycle. So, but the SYN cycle is also extensible, just like most other things in SPSYN. So you can actually interrupt or interact with this SYN cycle in order to, as I said, manipulate it. You can change the order of things. You can change the output. You can all sorts of things that you can do. Now I want to show you a couple of examples of that. So. And let me just start by showing you what I got here. This is a regular setup, nothing special here at all. I have the 1.2 SPSYN version running, and I also had the SPSYN store. The SPSYN store actually uses the SYN cycle to make sure that we automatically activate features from a solution when someone has deployed that. And that's sort of that's a different story, and I'm not going to show you that right now. But I want to show you a basic thing which may be useful to other people as well. So if we look at the source now that we're outputting here, as you said so earlier, I have two resources here, and these are for adding the SP services to the sites, and basically this is fine, and we get the output that I want. But in case of debugging, you may want to have a sort of a reference to which of the SPSYN resources will actually generate these outputs. So what I want to do in this example is I want to, for each of these resource items, I want to output an HTML comment that will essentially just give me the name of that resource item. So let me start and get this up and running. So I'll start. I have a test here, just a backup in case I mess things up. This is obviously a recording, but I tend to try not to edit them to make any changes or anything. So this is actually I'm writing this now real time, and no editing or anything. So let me just start here by creating a new project. Obviously, as I said, with any, or as I've said previously, with any SPSYN stuff, as long as you're able to build SharePoint stuff, then your tool doesn't matter. I'm using WSP Builder. That's just my preference. You can use whatever you want. So I'll just use the SYN cycle sample as in the name here, and then I'll want to hit OK, and that's basically the standard way of setting up a project. So the first thing I want to do is basically create a feature for this SYN cycle sample. So let me add a new item, and I'll add a blank item, a WSP feature, and I'll call this the SYN cycle sample, like that. And this will basically just create a new feature. You want this to be web scoped, by the way, or most features in SPSyn should be web scoped. You may have it in event handler, if you don't, then that's fine as well. You don't need it if you don't want it. So basically now we have a feature, and the first thing obviously that we want to do is we want to add a new class, and because this is the class that will contain the code that you inject in the syn cycle. So let me just start by adding something called syn cycle sample, like that. We'll add that. We'll obviously want to clean up some of this namespace stuff as well, like this. And the next thing I want to do is I want to add a reference to SPSyn. This will allow me to inherit from the syn cycle receiver class, which is the one we're responsible, the one that we need to inherit from in order to sort of get the correct methods and overloads that we want to have. So I'll just go into my recent here, and I have SPSyn available. So I'll just add that. And now I want to make sure that my class actually inherits from this syn cycle receiver. So the way to do that, I'll go in here and I'll say that I want to inherit from the syn cycle receiver. We'll just clean up this and have a using statement instead, like this. This will basically now make our class into a syn cycle receiver, which will allow us to sort of inject or to actually, this is a class that will be loaded. I'll show you how to actually connect this to the syn cycle in just a few moments. But as I said, now this is our class, and what you'll notice is that you have now a number of overrides that you can override in order to inject code into the various stages of the syn cycle, depending on when you want to inject your code. So you have two different classes of sort of events that you can interact with. And they are noted by being, or the name of the methods that you need to override start with either after or before. And obviously the before is what happens, before something, and then after happens, after something. So in this case, there's you'll notice that there are corresponding events that happen before and after the evaluation of or whether something should load, and whether or when you're getting the request string from the resource string from the resource item. So basically you can just on this you can basically start to see how this is working. You have sort of these events, and they trigger, and then whatever code you add in here, once you registered your syn cycle receiver, will basically trigger at that time. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to add some piece of code before the output of any kind of resource item, right? So it makes sense then to override the before resource item get resource string evaluation. It's a fairly long name, but it's also descriptive, so you sort of know what's going to happen. And then, by the way, notice that there's we can add a list to SharePoint as well, which will basically give us or we can have the using statement for SharePoint. Basically, just clean up our code a bit here. So what you'll notice with all of these syn cycle receivers and the methods in here is that you always get a syn cycle context, and that context object, it actually what it contains depends on where in the cycle you are actually working. So for instance, you see that there are two objects here, the HTTP context and the SP context. Those are only available in events that fire after the context has loaded. So you may have noticed in the list here there's a before context load, right? And it still accepts an SP syn cycle context, but that doesn't actually have those SP context objects and the HTTP context properties. So you can't actually interact with those yet. But then again, you can also see that there is an after context load. In that case, the context object will actually have the content of the SP request and the HTTP request. So, and obviously the same thing is when you are, for instance, there's a method for resource when you are loading all the resource items, and a similar one for before you're loading the resource items. Obviously, at that stage, you don't have access to a single specific resource item. So in that case, you're basically not going to be able to interact with the resource item. For instance, if you check this, you have a property here called current resource item. That's obviously not going to be available outside what's sort of the loop of each individual item. But in this case, this current resource item is available, and because now I'm actually inside one of these event receivers, or these methods that fire, in the loop of each, or while we're looping through the list. And in this case, what I want to do is I just want to get the title of that item, and I want to output that in an HTML comment. Now, the thing with before resource item get resource string evaluation, what that does is basically it prepends what you are outputting. So whatever you return from this method is going to be added before any other evaluation. So if you want to, this is sort of just something you added at the beginning. If you want to manipulate the whole thing after it's been done and you want to remove stuff or something like that, then basically you do that in the after method, or the corresponding after method, at which stage, as I said, you can, you get the entire resource string, you can do whatever you want with it, and whatever you return from that, it's actually going to be the output. So you need to make sure that you don't, just overwrite everything. But in any case, in our situation, what we want to do, we'll just create an output variable like this, and we'll say that this is going to be oh, come on, I just swap my keyboard layout here. Let me get that back to Norwegian, like that. We'll say string.format, like that. We want to add some kind of string here, and into that string format, we want to send the context and the current resource item, and we want to get the title. Notice, by the way, that this current resource item is actually just a plain SP list item. So whatever is available in the SP list item is also available inside here. So in this case, you can ask or query any of the properties or fields or the columns of that list item. You can update it. You can do pretty much whatever you want with it. So we're going to do this like that. We'll add some content into the actual string in a moment, and then we'll just return this output string like that. So as I said, what we want to do is we want to add an HTML comment like that, and then we want to add a placeholder or a token for our title, which is going to be something like that, right? So this is basically the class, and as I said, there's some other methods as well. You can do whatever you want in those. This will just illustrate the example of the scene cycle. So now that we have our class ready, we can basically just go ahead and build this, and okay, we'll just clean up some wrong using statements here like that. And now, obviously, the next thing we want to do is we want to get to sort of connect this to the feature, to connect this to SPSyn. In order to do that, we need to decorate the feature definition with some custom properties. In this case, I actually want to get my this is my sort of dirty way of cheating. Because WS people will do this for me. I know there are some tokens you can insert in Visual Studio Tools. I just do this when I get my strong name, because we don't want to add that. We'll just add a blank receiver with an event receiver. This will just give me that assembly with the strong name and everything. As I said, don't tell anyone. I'm lazy. I don't bother, creating these fancy tools to get that up and running. So just this, the key or the properties that we need to add to our feature, I basically just copied them already, but they follow the pattern of the other SPSyn sort of artifacts. So there's SPSyn, and there's underscore, and there's basically just what it is, and then there's the sort of properties that you want. So it's, in this case, we need to have three properties. It's SPSyn scene cycle receiver assembly, which is going to be the strong name of this assembly. We have a similar one for class, which is going to be the class that we just added. We'll also have a sequence, so that we can actually say in which order are these going to be, and higher numbers means later in the cycle. So if you have two scene cycle receivers, you can basically just control which order these fire in. So you can have one fire before the other, etc. Simply by just adding these in with different sequences. So again, let me just cheat again and pick up this strong name, and I'll just paste this into assembly here, like that. And then I want to get the correct class. We're going to get that from the namespace, which is actually the same as a class. So this is going to be extremely easy. It's going to be SynCycleSample.SynCycleSample. And I'll leave the sequence at 10,000. Doesn't matter, as I said, they're just ordering the number, the higher number, the later in the cycle, or later in the if you have multiple SynCycle receivers, the higher number is fired later. Right. So again, let me just delete this one. This is just my evidence of being a lazy coder, like that. And this is basically all we need to do in order to have our SynCycle fire. So, and then now we have our solution built. We'll just go and create a WSP file from this, provided everything works, obviously. Otherwise, as I said, I have a backup that will show you everything. And then we'll deploy this to the site. And once that's done, we'll go into our site again. We can basically just wait for a couple of moments before the IIS application pool recycles. And then once that's done, we can basically now just activate our SynCycle sample. And what we should see now, if everything has worked according to plan, is that just before each of the output, we'll actually see the title of the resource item, which is responsible for outputting this exact piece of code, right? So now, as I said, how many items you add to the resource list, it will basically just output in the same way. And this completely independent of any type of resource type or something like that. You can the cycle is, as I said, you have access to the item. You can do whatever you want with it inside the sort of loop of each of the items. And as I said, I encourage you to explore the documentation on this to see how this actually works. So check out the Codeplex page if you want to see more. The easiest way to access it is just go to sbsyn.com. But the full address on Codeplex is sbsyn.codeplex.com, and both of them will basically point to the same thing. So that's what I wanted to show you in this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.